Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
And I'm Karl Shute.
And today on the Online Great Books podcast, we're going to read Zane Grey's weird novel, Riders of the Purple Sage, which is, probably not the first Western, but it's certainly the first popular one, as best as I could tell. Did a little research, and I wanted to go back to, like Karl says, we want to eat the whole foods. We want to go to the primaries if we can. So we wanted to cover a Western, and this is sort of the oldest good one, supposedly, of the genre. Although, Karl, after reading this, I think James Fenimore Cooper's The Deerslayer is the first Western.
How far west does he get, though?
Well, does it matter? Western, upstate New York.
Is upstate New York west?
It was then. It was the frontier.
Maybe.
What's a Western?
The landscape is a character.
For sure.
I think that's the essential. It's good if it has cowboys. It has to have a certain kind of male character, I reckon.
Right. I think people have to be left to their own notions and devices to find and obtain justice in a Western.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's like, well, them's the rules, ma'am. Nobody does that in a Western.
Right, because there's nobody around.
Yeah.
You're so far that the law is whoever's going to enforce it.
Uh-oh.
So you're a bit on the limits of human civilization. I think that makes it a Western. There are space Westerns, in fact, which are not in the American West.
Yeah.
Some people would say that Star Wars is, except Star Wars went completely awful, and I hate it now. The good thing that Joss Whedon did, Firefly, definitely a Western.
Who's the Western protagonist male character in the real three Star Wars movies? Is it Han Solo? Because it's not Skywalker.
It's Han Solo.
Yeah, Skywalker.
He shoots first.
Right.
Han Solo's sitting in the saloon with Greedo, and Greedo's about to take him to Jabba the Hutt, and Han slowly unlatches his blaster, which is some kind of ancient World War I pistol.
Mauser pistol.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's the ugliest gun ever made. And he shoots him first. And then he strolls out and he flips a coin to the bartender and says, keep the tip, or whatever he says. Sorry about the mess. Keep the tip. That's a Western.
Yeah.
You know? He didn't wait to get brought before authorities or something. You know, he just decided they're going to take me in and I'm not going to go. Luke Skywalker is like the kid from Shane.
Oh, God.
With the missing father, and right. He's got a bigger past.
Is Jane in this book Luke Skywalker?
Jane was my least favorite character. I didn't hate her, but...
Yeah, she's broken. Enrollment at Online Great Books should be open right now, by the way. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast and join us. We need you there. There you go.
You need to be there. It'll be good for you. I watched the Slack channel. I've been working on another project for the last month, so I haven't been there as much as I need to. But I was just going through the seminars and looking at the quality of conversation that people are having. It's elevated and it's fun. That's the thing. It's really fun. You know, it's not a snob thing. It's much more fun. Believe me, it's much more fun to talk about Achilles than it is to talk about the Bears game.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And we've got all kinds of things going on there that we don't ever really talk about publicly, but I'm going to talk about it now.
Yes.
We've got a gentleman that works with us named Mark Swick who runs close reading sessions where he models for people how he does close reading of difficult material. He's been a Great Books guy for about 30 years. He worked for the Great Books Foundation for a number of years and has read and led seminars for decades. And he actually reads to our people. It's a weird thing. He takes maybe some Herodotus or something particularly sticky, and he reads it in a group setting and shares his inner monologue with the readers and demonstrates what he's thinking about, what he's paying attention to, the kinds of questions he asks of the text as he reads. Everybody that has gone to that says it's enormously helpful. We've got that thing. We've got Malachi Walsh's course on writing. He calls it Socratic Scribblings, where he uses sources like Aristotle's Rhetoric and a book of tropes that supposedly Shakespeare and Marlowe had access to, and some other tools to help people learn how to write. We've got Emmett Penny's work with Euclid's geometry. We have a logic course coming soon. And all of that stuff is available to our members, but we don't publicize it for outside of the program. And I just realized the other day that I don't think we'd really talked about any of those things on the show here, but it's good.
We have the mathematics thing, which I wish I could do. They're trying to drag me in. It's just a matter of bandwidth. But actually reading the people who came up with the stuff in math and trying to figure out their thought process. Connor, what's his last name?
Connor
is doing that with us, and that's a big deal. There's a textbook that he put together.
Yeah, he said, hey, when are we going to get to read Newton? I said, it's going to be quite a while. He's like, I want to right now. And so, okay, we'll go ahead. Well, he put together a 334-page textbook covering really the intellectual evolution of mathematics in the West, and they read primary sources like Archimedes, Oresme, Galileo, Newton, Leibniz, Euler, so on, and work through the book, the text, the real stuff.
You know what I'm thinking right now?
It's crazy.
I am Glaucon from Book 7 of the Republic.
Okay.
When he exclaims to Socrates, after Socrates describes the philosopher kings, "What beautiful people you have shown me, Socrates." And I'm thinking about that with the people on our Slack channel, the things that they're doing. It's a neat community.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting people are finding each other. That's one of the best things about the internet. There's plenty of things I grumble about on the internet, but one of the best things is it allows people of similar interests to meet each other.
Yeah, not similar opinions, just interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have different opinions. That's fantastic. Fight it out. There was a while I was doing Latin a little more seriously and actually had a conversation in Latin with a gentleman from Georgia, not Georgia, America, Georgia, Russian Federation.
Right.
In Latin. Neither of us spoke the other language. 30 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. If you wanted to study Latin, you're the only person in your town that cares about it.
We have a group studying Wheelock's Latin inside our program. Vince is doing that. I got a poem here from our poet laureate, Chris Kleinfelter. He posted this in Slack at Online Great Books. Looking at October. What I see in the trees is my favorite season. A season of favors given to helpful neighbors and friends still faithful like the one standing tall in dark forest made luminous in the splendor of fall. I place it all in memory while color still rises before the creeping frost comes to blanket the bright array and bring the chilling day when falling snow covers naked branches and the pure color of time turning the year to new wonders. He posted that in our Slack channel.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
I am in awe at the fine people that are showing up. Come join us.
Yeah. Purple's a big theme here, Karl.
Is sage really purple?
I think the blooms are. Or the sea's really wine dark.
No, they're not.
Okay.
That's the real puzzle on the Iliad. The wine dark sea, and you go look at the Aegean, like, is your wine blue?
Right.
This is not the color of wine.
Does the sage have to be purple?
I don't know. Are you getting a deep meaning out of the purple?
Everything's purple. The quail are purple. Quail aren't purple.
What color are they?
They're gray.
Well, maybe in the morning they're purple.
Mourning? I don't know. Okay. This book. This thing was serialized in what? Like Field and Stream magazine, wasn't it?
Yeah. 1912.
Yeah, 1912. This thing is serialized in just a popular magazine for outdoorsmen. Field and Stream, still around. And Zane Grey then compiled it all and put it out as a novel. And the guy wrote hundreds of these things. He's the first Louis L'Amour, So on one hand, this is this is a lot pulpy. He might have gotten paid by the word for this one. We don't know. But we've talked about Melville, Bartleby the Scrivener. He wrote by the word often. Dickens wrote and was paid by the word and serialized many of his most famous novels. Of course, Arthur Conan Doyle that we've covered in here. So just because it was in a pulp magazine doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad.
Right.
But I don't know how good, good, capital G, good this book is. But I sure did enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. So a bit of pulp fiction is going to have to suck you in. It's going to have to be entertaining. It's going to be, at least, it's like a meal. It's at least going to be tasty.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be the meal that you remember forever, but because you have to make money off of it.
It's got to hit the spot.
So the writers who do this are genuine craftsmen. They know how to do characterization. They know how to get you into a scene.
Writers of the purple prose.
Yep. Well, come on. Like I'm a fan of Dean Koontz, for example, who is a similar kind of writer, puts out like 2 or 3 novels a year. They're all of them good. Some of them are really good.
Right.
Like occasionally he hits it. Like Odd Thomas is a really good book, but some of them are just, well, that's a Dean Koontz book, and it's as good as every other Dean Koontz book, which is a certain level, because he's got to sell them, and he does sell them.
Right.
But because he's such a good writer at the mechanics of the pulp fiction, sometimes he surpasses it.
Right.
If that makes sense. I do not look down on these sorts of people that make money by writing a lot of stories.
Yeah, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, if it's so easy, you do it, you know? Like my daughter saying to me, I forget which book I read her, The Big Sleep. I read her some paragraphs of it. She says, I could write like that. And I said, do it.
I dare you. I dare you.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll bring you the cocktail. No, I wasn't going to bring her a cocktail, but if it's so easy, you do it. It's not so easy. So I don't want to look down at that. I want to talk about the edition I have before we get into the story. I have this one.
Nice.
The cover is purple. It is from 2006. And there's some neat things about this. I was just remembering all of these trade paperbacks I used to have before the days of Kindle. And it's apparently the first unexpurgated version, because they probably cut out some of the Mormon stuff. But it's got ads in the back, and I love the ads. It has this big card in the middle. Get 4 free books. You can have the best Westerns delivered to your door for less than you'd pay in a bookstore online. Sign up for one of our book clubs today. We'll send you 4 free books. And Louis L'Amour, Max Brand, Zane Grey, Cotton Smith, Tim Chaplin, Johnny D. Boggs. You could join the Western Book Club.
I miss that. And the thing in the back where you cut the page out and you check the box next to the books you want and you mail them, $1.25 each to, have them ship them to your house. I miss that.
Yeah, they're advertising me. Zane Grey, Tonto Basin, Louis L'Amour, A Man Called Trent, Lonesome Range, John D. Nesbitt. It was making me remember my youth. All right, so there's Mormons in it.
Yep. I called our good Mormon friend.
Okay.
And I said, hey, I'm reading Riders of the Purple Sage. He said, oh, gosh. and I was only about 25 pages in. And I said, I can't figure out if this is an anti-Mormon screed or if the Mormons are going to be redeemed in the end here. And he said, well, no spoilers. I'm not going to say anything about that. But he said, you'll see in movies and books prior to World War II that the Mormons are often the bad guys. And he said, I think we got new bad guys around 1938 to write stories about, and that you just don't see in the Mormons being the bad guys in these in movies and books after then. But I think the Mormon question here, I still think stands. Well, do we need to give a little plot outline?
Well, sure. There's so Jane is the beautiful woman, Jane Withersteen, beautiful Mormon woman, kind to everyone, to a fault probably, has an understanding with a non-Mormon young man, and the Mormon bishop and under bishop person, Tull, I forget what his
elder
role was. They want her to become a Mormon wife.
Tull wants her for his own additional wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are putting economic pressure on her to get her to fold. She's the daughter of a successful rancher. She's got good land in southern Utah with a spring and everything. The land is described all over the place in a bunch of herds. And they're running off the herds and making all her people quit and trying to wear her down. But then Lassiter shows up.
And then Lassiter shows up because you got to have a stranger mosey into town because it's a Western. The Mormon church here in Cottonwood, which is the town, It's a vast criminal conspiracy in this book here. Jane is Mormon. So, is it pro-Mormon? Is it not pro-Mormon? In a lot of ways, it certainly is not pro-Mormon. But I don't know that Zane Grey actually had any opinions about the Mormon church. I think he's writing a darn story here, and they were dark and mysterious and from a weird place that had only been in the United States for about 18, 19, 20 years at that point. I think it just made for good writing, an interesting story for him. But Jane's notion of proper Mormonism or Christian behavior is butting up against these people, and it's men, by the way, these Mormon men who have a perverted sense of right and wrong. The Mormon women in the story don't seem to have that perverted sense of right and wrong. I don't think it's entirely a negative about towards the Mormon church.
Which of the Sherlock Holmes has Mormons as the bad guys?
The Five Pips?
Yeah, one of the novels, novels has that as well.
It's the Sign of Four, yeah, I think.
Yeah, your Mormon friend is not incorrect.
Yeah.
They were bad guys for a while until we got, I guess, who were the next bad guys? The Nazis?
Maybe, yeah. Or the Russians.
Or gangsters or something.
Yeah, or gangsters, yeah. Jane gets her goodness, if she has any, which is interesting, from one, her father's pioneer spirit and his independence. He settled that part of Utah, and he built that part of Utah. They say over and over again that he built this house in the town and the spring, and he developed this and he developed that, and the people there were dependent on him and his industry for their jobs and livelihood. And she has that in her. But she is also a prayerful, thoughtful person, and she gets that from the Mormon church as well. It's really interesting. And she's devout. She's devout, and she's conflicted the whole time about her duty to the Mormon church and what she thinks is the Mormon church's oversight or error. Like, she doesn't ever really question the church, but she just thinks that they're astray a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, so the good parts of her character are from her Mormonism. So I was thinking about this. I go to a Catholic church. Catholics are bad guys in a lot of novels, too.
Right.
And so I was thinking, what would we talk about this? Because I know we have some Mormon members and listeners. And, this is the Da Vinci Code for you.
That's exactly right.
I don't know. Take it in stride. If it offends you, say, well, these Mormons are the bad kind of Mormons.
Right.
They're that one splinter group in southern Utah that in 1871 that did bad things. But
yeah, they're the John Birchers of the LDS church. They got read out at some point. Back to the pulp thing. Is there a lot of deep symbolism in here, Karl? Does the purple mean something? Do these horses mean something? Is it just what it is? Or is there allegory in here? And I never want to nerd out too much, but it's hard to not do it.
Well, I didn't figure anything on the purple, but there's a Garden of Eden
for sure,
where a couple of the characters managed to end up, and a couple of characters end up going back to, which was interesting at the end. We'll get to that in the end.
Did you like this book?
I liked it more at the end. I really liked the ending. I thought that was good.
As I was reading it, I thought Karl's struggling.
No, it was all right.
It was all right. Hate on it if you want to.
I thought it started slow, but then it picked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I was excited to get to the ending. I think it was 2 days ago I finished it. And I got through about 150 pages in a sitting. Yeah, it's a page turner. When you get through it, the beginning is like, what's going on? I'm not sure I like Jane.
I never did like her.
She knows she's pretty. She enjoys that she's beautiful. She has all these men doting on her. And poor Venters. So Venters is, I guess, a hand of hers.
Yeah, rider.
That she's engaged to. It made me think, did Zane mean them to be engaged?
Right.
When he started writing it, and then he's 300 pages in his Field and Stream thing, he's got to go back and make them engaged?
Right. I don't think so. He's a Gentile.
Yeah, non-Mormon.
Yeah, the non-Mormons, the Gentiles, are second-class citizens here in this book. They don't have the same economic opportunities. They don't have the same freedoms that the Mormons do. He says, there had been a time when night in the high altitude of these Utah uplands had been satisfying to Venters, but that was before the oppression of enemies had made the change in his mind. As a rider guarding the herd, he had never thought of the night's wildness and loneliness as an outcast. Now when the full silence set in and the deep darkness and trains of radiant stars shone cold and calm, he lay with an ache in his heart. For a year he had lived as a black fox driven from his kind. Jane and Venters are beset upon by the Mormon Church, and particularly the bishop and then Elder Toll. Toll wants her for himself. They are constantly, those two men are constantly applying pressure on her to not do charitable things for the Gentile people of the community, to not associate with Venters, and for her to marry Toll and become yet another of his wives. And probably they're very, very interested in consolidating all that property under male stewardship.
Yeah, I liked Venters' words. For me, it's page 13 of chapter 1. Will you leave Utah? Oh, I know, went on Venters tauntingly. It galls you, the idea of beautiful Jane Withersteen being friendly to a poor Gentile. You want her all yourself. You're a wiving Mormon. Is that an epithet in the Old West? You have use for her at Withersteen House in Eber Spring and 7,000 head of cattle. In other words, this is purely a mercantile operation on your part. She's got vast tracts of land. That's the attraction of Jane Withersteen. You didn't get that joke.
Yes, mercantile. Would you
No, the big tracts of land.
Oh.
From Monty Python, Holy Grail?
No, never seen it.
The king is trying to get his prince, who's not particularly interested, to marry the princess. And he's explaining how beautiful the princess is. And she's got huge tracts of land.
I see.
Yeah, you didn't get it. The audience got it. Dear listeners got it.
You Monty Python people. Good Lord. Would you like to be a wiving Catholic?
What, with more than one wife?
Yeah.
No. It is my opinion that one wife is
more than enough.
Is enough.
Yeah, I can't imagine the complexity of being in that kind of association with that many people. That's wild.
Yeah, well, Jacob did it. Biblical Jacob.
Yeah, we know how that went. Venters is a good man. He escapes maybe a brush with death with these Mormons that have come in to Jane's estate. There, when he talks about him being wiving Mormons. But Lassiter comes in the last minute there. And
literally as an answer to Jane's prayers.
Right.
Right. She's about to give in, and then she feels this. It says, suddenly there came an inward constriction, a hardening of gentle forces within her breast. Like a steel bar it was, stiffening all that had been soft and weak in her. She felt the birth of her of something new and unintelligible. I could go on. It's a bit purple prose, but she's whence cometh my help? It was a prayer. And then there's a stir and somebody points to the west. Look, a rider, an answer to her prayer. And it's tall, dark, and handsome. Lassiter.
I had to look that up because I thought, with the ER on the end, I thought like it was some sort of artificer, because I didn't know what that word meant. Like, you know what a cooper is and all that. I thought, was there such a thing as someone who makes lassets? I didn't know what it meant. So I went and looked it up. It's English, and it would have been someone from Leicester, Leicester, England. Yeah, interesting. Lassiter, by the way, is riding a noble steed. Like he had done like 70 miles that day on this amazing horse who was blind. Blind horse.
Can you do that? I thought that was a Pulp Fiction thing. Not only is he...
Does it mean something?
Blind horse. Well, who has a blind horse?
Lassiter.
I don't know. Justice? Blind Justice, maybe?
Death rides a blind horse.
Well, Justice is supposed to be blind.
Right.
Angel of Death, but Death rides a pale horse. Biblically. As in the Clint Eastwood movie, Pale Rider.
After he gets there, she decides that she'll water his horse herself. And she said, he has brought you far today. He says, yes, ma'am, a matter of over 60 miles, maybe 70. A long ride, a ride that... he is blind. Yes, ma'am. What blinded him? Some men once roped and tied him and then held white iron close to his eyes. She says, oh, men, you mean devils. Were they your enemies? Mormons? Yes, ma'am. To take revenge on a horse, Lassiter, the men of my creed are unnaturally cruel. Lassiter has no love for the Mormons. There's about 4 plots here.
Yeah. What's going on with him, I love the way he's described in my edition, 2006. It is page 16. Jane, greeting him, looked up into a face that she trusted instinctively and which riveted her attention. It had all the characteristics of the range riders, the leanness, the red burn of the sun, and the set changelessness that came from years of silence and solitude. But it was not these which held her, but rather the intensity of his gaze, a strained weariness, a piercing wistfulness of keen gray sight, as if the man were forever looking for that which he never found. That's a good description. Then there's your Western hero.
Yeah.
Right there. You can't be like a modern movie male lead in a Western. You can't talk about your feelings, at least not very much. You can't be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Effusive. Well, we know what they're not. I mean, we know what they are. You have to be laconic, a few words. You have to be rugged. Your appearance has to be affected by the environment. You've got to be dusty. You've got to be dry. Or if it's raining, you've got to be wet. Like they're a person of the outdoors. And they're really not supposed to have a lot of emotions except for just like anger.
Well, I don't know. You might have one because Lassiter has them and they'll be deep and strong, but you're not going to talk about them.
Well, it's nobody's business.
Right.
Nobody deserves those things. I thought about how much inner life that Venters and Lassiter are depicted as having here. Very interesting. They're alone a lot as range riders in an enormous ranch like this. Even when you were out tending a herd with other cowboys, you'd still be alone with the horse most of the day. Mm-hmm. And, all the room that would afford you for having an inner life. I was jealous of it. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be a different sort of person. Because all of us nowadays, most of us nowadays are in constant contact with other people. You wake up, you grab your phone, you check your social media. Where do you have the time to develop an inner life? What do we mean by inner life?
The inner life would be a contemplative and introspective aspect of yourself that was dependent on no other person but yourself.
Okay.
What do you think?
That works. If you constantly have external input, what room do you have ever to think?
Yeah, you constantly end up reacting to others.
Well, okay. So, dear listener, you can try this experiment. Next time you get in your car, don't turn your radio on. Don't turn a podcast on, except ours. No, turn ours off too.
Yep.
Just be silent and see what happens. And if that thought fills you with dread, then you probably don't have much of an inner life.
Yeah. Because
you need to have the noise on so that you don't notice that you don't have much of an inner life. I mean, could you be a rider on the range like Lassiter or Venters? Or would it drive you crazy and you need to go back in town and sit in the saloon and talk to people all day? I don't know which is better. I'm just saying that the discomfort that some people have with silence. Like, I like the Western hero because, believe it or not, I don't think I'm an extrovert.
Oh, I know you're not.
Okay. I kind of talk for a living, but I don't want to talk. And when I get to not talk, it's really good. Mm-hmm. It's really good. But there's this idea that you have to be social, you have to be cheerful. And this is a different kind of ideal.
Our listeners are probably mostly introverts, I would guess. But extroverts don't know this. And every time I tell a real live extrovert this, they can't believe it. Introverts aren't necessarily shy. I am actually very introverted, but I'm not shy. I'll do public speaking. I'll do this. I don't care. I actually like talking to people I care about, but talking to large groups of people, particularly people I'm not connected with, exhausts me. Has Clint Eastwood ever played an extroverted character?
No.
No. About your radio experiment, Karl. I was looking around for hearing protection. I've got I bought a big old pack sack of these little styrofoam or little foam things. You roll them up and you stuff it in your ear hole, hearing protection earplugs. But I wanted some good earmuffs. And I got to looking around, and this company called Decibel Defense makes apparently the best ones. But 3M makes some that have Bluetooth in them. So you could put them on and it drowns out all the outside noises, but you can connect it to your phone and still listen to a podcast or something like that. I was sorely tempted to buy those, but I didn't. I bought the Decibel Defense ones. And so when I'm running a chainsaw or on a piece of equipment or whatever, there's nothing but the activity there. It's just me and the thing. That was a good call, but I was tempted.
Yeah, you got to fill your ear holes with something all the time. I think it's probably good practice, is getting beyond the novel. It's probably good practice to spend some time in your day when you don't have anything pouring in you.
Yeah.
And see what's in there.
Lassiter and Venters, I think, are heroic because they know what's in there, right? They're self-assured. They know what their sense of what they believe justice is. When it's time to act, they know what they want to do, so they're able to act. They're complete within themselves. You might disagree with what their notions of justice are or whatever, but they've been alone enough that they know what they think.
Yeah, you scratch the surface of Lassiter and you just find more Lassiter.
It's Lassiter all the way to the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not opinion takers. They've never done it before. They don't do things by consensus. And that alone time, I think, is one of the reasons they're like that. This book, what is it? This book is about salvation, Karl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about man and woman.
That's what I said.
So you repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Or I repeat you. Well, I suppose we got to get some of the plot then. So Venters goes out. He's defending against rustlers.
Because some rustlers done rustled the white herd. No, wait a minute. The red herd. The red herd.
Yeah, they're by color.
Yeah.
And there's two of them. Venters shoots them. And he kills one of them, but he wings the other. So Oldring, who's the rustler in chief, has this masked rider that goes out and terrorizes everybody. And Venters sees the masked rider and another one, and he shoots the other one. And it says in the beginning of chapter 5, the first man at whom he'd ever aimed a weapon, he had shot through the heart. This is the first time he's ever done it. Good shot.
He'd been practicing because he expected trouble.
Yeah. But the other one, this skinny kid with the mask on and doesn't have any guns, Venters thinks he's a boy. And then it's a girl. A woman, a girl. I've killed a girl. Mystery. Who is this person? Well, she's not dead. She's not dead. She only got shot through the upper part of her lung. She'll be okay in the end. But now all of a sudden, Venters has changed a bit. So he has responsibility for this rustler that he shot, who's a girl. And I was thinking about that. If it had been a man that he had shot that lived through, the thing that's driving Venters to change in this book and to do all the things that he does is that it's a girl, and a pretty girl.
She says, "You shot me. You've killed me," she whispered in panting gasps. Upon her lips appeared a fluttering, bloody froth. By that Venters knew the air in her lungs was mixing with blood. "Oh, I knew it would come someday," she said. "Oh, the burn. Hold me. I'm sinking. It's all dark. Oh, God, mercy." He thought then she died. They've got this weird chivalry in here. Early on in the book, Venters says, "Where I was raised, a woman's word was law. I ain't quite outgrown that yet." The Gentiles hold these women in a certain kind of regard in this book that is different than that of Elder Tull and Bishop Dyer. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. So he has to save this woman. He has to save this woman. And he has to save her because if she dies, then he is beyond salvation. Am I reading too much into it? In the beginning, he has to save her so he is not a murderer of woman.
Right. That's the worst thing that you could be.
That's the worst thing for Venters that he could possibly be. So in the beginning, it is salvation. Later, he comes to love her. Why does he love her? She has exhibited, at that point, nothing.
Well, this is a great big secret. Women don't have to do much for us to love them.
God, you weren't supposed to say that.
Well, we could cut it out in editing.
We've been keeping that secret. I can't believe you did it. He loves her for what he has become in her presence. Well, he has changed. He's not hunting down the rustlers of the Red Herd anymore. His thoughts of revenge and murder are gone. He's become a caring person who has interest outside of his own, lonesomeness that we were talking about earlier. She's given him a higher, better purpose than he had before. Later on, we find out that she is wonderfully virtuous for some odd reasons. But when he starts to love her, he doesn't know those things. In fact, he thinks that she has a shameful secret that she must wear the mask, that has caused her to wear the mask and caused her to hang out with the rustlers. And he has come to love her in spite of a shame that he thinks she has. Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting little plot device.
I'm wondering how much of this Zane Grey had mapped out before he started writing. It's like, I got to get a new thing to Field and Stream this month, and I need a page turner. And so I'm going to end it with the girl. It's a girl. That's a good hook.
Right.
How will I do this? At the end of chapter 5, Venters is going to take her back. Venters has figured out where the rustlers come from. They have this hidden canyon. It's a whole bunch of canyons interconnected that you can get lost in. If you've ever been out there in the high plains, you can go right up to a canyon and never see it. If you miss the entrance, it's like Rivendell or something. You'll never see it because it's just. Why? Have you ever been up there? You ever been in New Mexico and high plains areas?
Yeah. But you said Rivendell.
Well, it is. That's what Rivendell is. It's some of our listeners will get the Tolkien reference and appreciate it.
That's not where Archie and Jughead went to high school?
That's Riverdale.
Oh.
Not Rivendell.
Okay. I don't know.
See what I have to deal with. But he finds out that Oldring's rustlers have been riding through some waterfall at the end of a canyon. That's how no one can ever catch him. And he says, well, when you get better, strong enough, I'll take you back to the canyon where the rustlers ride through the waterfall.
No.
Don't take me back there. End scene. It's perfect for a movie. This is what you have to do with this kind of novel. You get to the end of the chapter and you hit them with something that makes them need to get to the next one. Well, why didn't she want to go back there? I got to get the next issue of Field and Stream.
The cliffhanger.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them in here. So Lassiter, let's go back to Lassiter. Lassiter has this mission that he's on. So Millie Earn is the woman that Lassiter has come to find her grave. Millie Earn is somebody that Lassiter knew and somebody that had been a friend of Jane's. Well, Lassiter wants to know who was the dirty, low-down scoundrel that drug her to ruin.
And she tells him, I know who it is. I ain't telling you.
Well, she says, tell you, I never. And he says, and this is perfect for the Western hero, I reckon you will, and I'll never ask you.
I love that line.
So every John Wayne movie you ever saw, he's playing Lassiter. If you're not enjoying the novel just on its own, but you like Westerns, every single Western, every single John Wayne character, this is Rooster Cogburn.
Yeah.
Just a little more profane, Rooster Cogburn. But he's not going to ask her, but she's going to tell him. It's like, go back to Han Solo. Princess Leia says, I love you. And he says, I know. It's real good.
The White Herd stampedes, Karl.
Uh-huh. Lassiter does his first noble deed. His first noble deed was showing up in the nick of time to make sure that the bad Mormons didn't do bad things to Venters.
Yep.
And this is his second noble deed, his Aristeia, where the herd is stampeding. They need to mill the herd. Are you familiar with that? You have fences in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we have fences. That's just crazy stuff. So the idea is you've got 2,400, I think is the number they said are in the White Herd, cattle that have been startled and they're all running, and nobody knows why they're running, but they better go fast. Lightning and thunder could do this. Animals could do it. Gunfire, open range cattle like that they're rangy. That's what we'd say. They're wily. They're not tame whatsoever. They're highly vigilant for predators and other things, and they can be startled. And then being herd animals, when you startle one, they all panic. It's kind of like American politics, and then they stampede. And the bad guys, we don't really know exactly who the bad guys are, have been trying to startle and stampede this herd for quite a while, and they do. The herd takes off running, and the danger is that they do like the buffalo and just run off into a ravine and just run off the edge of a canyon and just all die. So Lassiter, on his blind horse, which is fast as the wind, of course, runs alongside this stampeding herd and gets abreast and then finally slightly ahead of this herd and turns the lead animals. And he turns them and continues to turn them. Like, he can't stop them, but you can kind of hurt it. So he turns them, and he ends up turning the herd back on itself, so that eventually the lead animals turn into the animals at the end of the herd, and they just run in a continually tighter circle. The problem is, so when you turn into the herd, you end up, as a rider, in the stampeding herd of 500 to 1,400 pound animals, and that you're in great danger. And his horse ends up getting killed. They lose some riders, but he emerges unscathed, and the herd is saved.
Mm-hmm. And so now you know something of his quality. He's the sort of guy, the sort of man that can do that. He's the one that comes up with the plan, and he's the one that executes it. And it's dangerous, and he manages it at great personal peril, but doesn't say anything.
Right.
Killed my horse. Mm-hmm. He says Hoss, hoss, I guess. I don't know. Gray's trying to do the accent and goes off to catch the rustlers.
Meanwhile, Jane has said, well, he pledges to be her friend. And she says, I'll accept your friendship. Be proud of it. Return it, if I may keep you from killing another Mormon. And he knows that she is beset upon by these Mormons. And he says, I'll tell you one thing. He said bluntly, as the gray lightning formed in his eyes, you're too good a woman to be sacrificed as you're going to be. No, I reckon you and me can't be friends on such terms. She's got this transactional thing that she does with him throughout the whole entire book, up until the very end, where frankly, she's stringing him along just so he won't harm the people that would do her evil. And I hate her for it.
Yeah, I didn't like her much. So when Aristotle talks about friendship, you can have the friendship of the transaction. You can have friendships of pleasure. You can have genuine friendship. And she's back at the transactional level a lot.
Yeah. And she knows better. Like, she knows he's a man of power. She knows he's a man of virtue. She knows that she's what he needs. Or, well, he's what she needs.
Yeah.
But her fidelity to Tall and Dyer and her church community prevent her from having a relationship with him, a real one. You came here to kill a man, he says. The man who dragged Millie Ern to hell, put it that way, Jane Withersteen. Yes, that's why I came here. I'd tell so much to no other living soul. There are things such a woman as you'd never dream of, so don't mention her name again. Not till you tell me the name of the man. Tell you never. I reckon you will, and I'll never ask you. I'm a man of strange beliefs and ways of thinking. I seem to see into the future and feel things hard to explain. He knows what he wants, and she knows what he wants. And she knows that Millie was done wrong. She knows better than maybe better than anyone. And I understand her not wanting him to kill people. I do. I denounce murder, Karl. But that transactional thing that she does with him, like, she can be frank with him and still help keep him from being murderous. But she doesn't. She's a piece of shit.
I wouldn't go that far. I think she is trying to serve a whole bunch of different masters and try to keep them all satisfied. And rather than, this is so much fun to talk about because it's such a pulpy book, rather than give herself to the man that she clearly loves, she has to justify it by putting a price on it. She can't just let herself do it. So she has to say, well, I'll do it to save Mormons from being shot by him. And that'll make it okay.
So she hasn't gotten married in a traditional Mormon relationship. She hasn't gotten married to Venters. She's not in a real relationship with Venters either. It's a weird thing with him. It's a weird thing with Lassiter. Like, what is she? What is she? What is she doing? And
she doesn't want to be. She's a.
She wants it over. She wants everything. She wants the Gentiles to love her. She wants the Mormons to love her. She wants Lassiter to love her. She wants Venters to love her. And she wants to never authentically go all in with anybody or anything.
Right.
She's the original e-girl. She's just doing it for the likes, Karl.
How many Instagram followers does she have?
4 in this story.
Yeah. Well, every morning she gets and goes in front of her mirror and takes a look at herself and takes a click in her 1871 Mormon woman outfit and posts it to Instagram.
Yeah. She does look at herself in the mirror quite a bit, actually, in this story.
Yeah. So there's some vanity there, too. She has an image of herself as a certain kind of person that everybody loves. And she's trying to make that happen. And she's not going to be able to make that happen because they're going to make her submit, which she doesn't want to do.
She's just awful. And there's a little Gentile girl in the neighborhood. She's dirt poor, like has no clothes except for just rags. Little Faye. Faye's father has died. Faye's mother is ill. They don't say. I can imagine tuberculosis. The mother says, Mrs. Larkin says, that we couldn't have made it without your helps. And Jane goes over there frequently to try to give Mrs. Larkin to give her the girl to take care of, to raise as her own. It's crazy. Like, what does Jane think people are for? She thinks they're all for Jane. She just thinks they're all there to serve Jane. Oh, I like your little girl. Give her to me. Go out there and get your horse killed and get stomped by a bunch of cattle. I'll be your friend if you don't kill the other people that want to kill me. She's a piece of junk. Meanwhile, the masked rider, though, she's not. She's recuperating, and Venters has been killing rabbits and bringing them to her and taking care of her. Well, and they have a little conversation. Do you realize we are here alone, man and woman? Yes. Have you thought that we may make our way out to civilization, or we may have to stay here alone, hidden from the world all our lives? She says, I never thought till now. Well, what's your choice, to go or to stay here alone with me? Stay. Newborn thought of self ringing vibrantly in her voice gave her answer singular power. Venters trembled and then swiftly turned his gaze from her face, from her eyes. He knew what she had only half divined, that she loved him.
Why? I mean, he shot her. This is the best love story.
He shot her, but she knows that he didn't know, that he only knew the folklore about the masked rider. He always acts according to what he thinks is true. And when he finds out the truth, that she's young Bess and that she's pure as the driven snow, and when the chips are down, he will protect her and cherish her and take care of her. And she loves that about him. He's a man of power, Karl.
I like that he is developing his full character in response to taking care of her. There's probably something true about that.
I think so.
Men and women do better with each other.
He shoots her, and they're real close to Deception Pass. And he's got to find a place to hide her while she recuperates, and he can't take her far because she's got internal bleeding, and he knows it, and he's worried about that she'll die. And remember, early on, if she dies, then he, in his own mind, will be a murderer, and his salvation is gone. So he has to protect her, and he finds a hidden valley, a hidden canyon. No one knows where it is except him. And it's Eden, like you said, Karl, earlier. It's Eden, Once you get up inside this canyon, it's huge, and it's got water, and wildlife is prolific, and there are cliff dwellings where Indians, native peoples in the past had found and lived there and flourished there. And he tells her, we may have to stay there alone, hidden from the world all our lives. God, it just sounded wonderful. At the opening of this canyon or this hidden valley, there's a giant rock on a pedestal that the Indians, the native peoples of the past, had taken axes or something and chipped away at that pedestal so that this rock just teetered on this pedestal. And they knew, and Venters determines that they had done that because with just a shove, they could push this boulder off of this pedestal and then seal the entrance to their village that's inside this beautiful Eden-like valley forever to protect themselves from the outside. Mm-hmm. So they have to make their way past this precarious boulder that could seal them off from the rest of the world forever every time they go in and out of the thing. So every time you go in and out of this valley, you have to think about, I might not ever get out. And you also kind of like, what is it? Camus says, when you step up to the edge of the precipice, you're not afraid that you'll fall. You're afraid that you'll jump, mm-hmm. whatever that saying is. Part of the problem for me would be afraid that I would actually just push the damn thing.
So the interesting character point, Lassiter has always wanted to throw rocks off high places.
Right. Always.
Who doesn't,
Right.
And we might be pushing a little bit. It sure feels like Eden to me. And biblical Eden has an angel standing guard that won't let you back in. Well, that's the stone.
Whether Zane Grey is like explicitly thinking that in his mind when he writes this or not, I don't know. But he definitely wanted a safe place where these two could develop their relationship in this story. He couldn't have them develop this relationship if they were in Cottonwood, if they were at Withersteen's place, whatever. This is the only way the story could happen, I think. Didn't you want to go there and stay? Didn't you want to go and push the stone?
Mm-hmm.
With your woman?
Yes. Very attractive idea, to me at least.
Isn't that what we all want? Just
a hidden valley in Utah?
Yeah, just to be alone with your person.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it's not just a hidden valley. Like, all their needs are met. It's beautiful, clean, sparkling water. It's like the Galapagos Islands. It's so remote, the animals aren't even scared of people.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just grab the rabbit when it's time to eat.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I mean, that's what made me think this is definitely Eden. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he set out to do it, but he's got it in his head because all the animals coming up to Adam to be named. You don't have to explicitly set out to be obvious when you're writing and say, I'm going to write a parallel to Eden. You don't have to do that. But if you're a kid who grew up and you knew the stories, which everybody used to know, all the biblical stories, and you start to write a novel and you have to have a place for your characters to go, it's going to start to be like Eden because it's in you. So my dad will complain. My dad, who is an OGB member, will complain about us belaboring these authors and saying, well, what did they really mean? It's like, they didn't mean anything. I'm imitating him. Well, no, they might have, but they might not have done it on purpose.
Yeah.
If you're an interesting person with good character and you write a book, it's going to have all of those layers of you in it. I mean, if we had Zane Grey here, he said, Mr. Grey, were you thinking of the Garden of Eden when you wrote this place? Were you thinking of Eden?
Surprise Valley.
I reckon I was. I didn't know.
Well, do you even have to know the Genesis story to write about Eden? Right? Like, come on, Karl. Doesn't the story just exist? Like, if you think about a place where all your needs are met and you can be man and woman without external influence, and that's what you get. You all be drinking that free bubble up, eating that rainbow stew. That's just what you get.
Free bubble up and rainbow stew?
Right, that's what Merle says, yeah.
Yeah, that's an argument from the nature of the human being, that we are such as we are, that something like Eden is attractive to us.
Of course.
Yeah, and so the biblical story is what it is, but it's also attractive to us because we are who we are.
When I was a kid, well, still, but especially when I was a kid, I love these sort of survival stories. Like My Side of the Mountain. Have you ever read that thing?
I don't think so.
Gene Craighead, I think, wrote it. Man, nowadays are these Hatchet books. I was too old for those when those came out. I found a book when I was a little kid. I found it in the public library. It was called Eskimo Island. It was about an Eskimo. Yeah, anyway, there's just these sort of wilderness survival stories.
Boxcar Kids.
The Boxcar Children. Love those stories.
The luckiest orphans.
Oh, my God.
Ever. Wonderful
life. You know, I loved those stories like that. Who wouldn't? This is the Boxcar Children with hot girls. Bess is hot. The Masked Rider. She's hot. I saw.
So I want to talk about Jane and Lassiter a bit. So for me, this is chapter 11.
Jane's boring.
Yeah, Jane's manipulative, but she admits it. All these days that you've been so friendly and like a partner, all these evenings that have been so bewildering to me, your beauty and the way you looked and came close to me, they were women's tricks to bind my hands. Yes. So she's confessing. But now Jane is changing. Jane's passionate, unheeding zeal began to loom darkly. Lassiter, whatever my intention in the beginning, Faye loves you dearly, and I've grown to like you.
I've grown to like you.
She's trying to change him.
Yep. Yeah, she's more interested in changing him than she is in just him.
Isn't this like Angel and the Bad Man? Isn't that a movie?
It's every stupid movie. Silence of the Lambs. I don't know.
So he's got some words for her. He says she's being unfaithful. But you're not free of Mormonism. And in playing this game with me, you've been unfaithful. Unfaithful, faltered Jane, because she thinks she's being perfectly faithful. Yes, I said unfaithful. You're faithful to your bishop and unfaithful to yourself. You're false to your womanhood and true to your religion. But for a saving innocence, you'd have made yourself low and vile, betraying yourself, betraying me, all to bind my hands to keep me from stuffing up Mormon life. It's your damned Mormon blindness. And she says, is it vile? Is it blind? Is it only Mormonism to save human life? No, Lassiter, that's God's law, divine, universal for all Christians. He's not having it. The blindness I mean is blindness that keeps you from seeing the truth. I've known many good Mormons, but some are blacker than hell. You won't see that even when you know it.
Yep.
So there's some interesting stuff on the Mormons are the bad guys here, but she is putting her religious duties ahead of her personal duties, which is some interesting things to think about. I mean, what is she?
28.
She's nigh on to spinsterhood.
Yeah, she's 28, I think, is what I calculated.
Why is she doing it? Because she thinks she has duties to her community and her church and everything else. But
I know this is just a story, but it's not binary. She could be a faithful Mormon and not marry Tull. Like, there's more ways to Mormon than one. She's more interested in manipulating all of these people and being the puppet master. It's all artifice. There's nothing real about her.
Well, it's real that she likes Lassiter.
But she only likes him. Like,
she does more than that. She just doesn't know how to do it.
I don't know.
Well, you got to get to the end.
I didn't buy it at the end. I think she's full of it, and I don't think we'll get there. We'll get there. But so I like it that the Bishop Dyer comes to visit Jane. Lassiter pulls up while he's already there, and the bishop draws on Lassiter. And Lassiter, being as good as he is, shoots him in the arm before the guy can even, level that pistol out. My favorite part, maybe, of the whole book is Lassiter calls him a fat party. He says, and I don't care a damn for who that fat party was. Huh?
Which chapter is this?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I read it in this stupid fake book. Chapter 11, Faith and Unfaith was the title of the chapter.
So Jane's a character with some problems. And what I like, and I think is kind of a thing in Westerns, is she thinks she's going to change him, but it doesn't work out that way. He changes her.
Yeah, she's not real. How would she change him?
Get him to not be himself, get him to not be the self-sufficient man that he is.
Here, let me torture this. If she's a lever, there's no fulcrum. She's got nothing to stand on. There's nothing there to make him change because he's a man of character. You know, she's trying to use her feminine wiles and her female attention to get him to change, but he's too...
Well, he's been out on the range
for... He's too solid for that, though.
Years, you know. I think he's okay on feminine wiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so back to Bess and Venters up in the Garden of Eden.
Which is the best part of the story.
In Surprise Valley, that's what they call it. Gosh, I love the descriptions. So the descriptions, you might think they're hokey. I think they're wonderful. So this is chapter 13. Venter's swift glance took in the brightening valley, and Bess and her pets and Ring and Whitey. It swept over all to return again and rest upon the girl. She had changed. To the dark trousers and blouse she had added moccasins of her own make, but she no longer resembled a boy. No eye could have failed to mark the rounded contours of a woman. The change had been to grace and beauty. A glint of warm gold gleamed from her hair, and a tint of red shone in the clear dark brown of the cheeks. The haunting sweetness of her lips and eyes that earlier had been elusive, a promise, had become a living fact. She fitted harmoniously into that wonderful setting. She was like Surprise Valley, wild and beautiful.
I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's some of the...
The Bess and Venters story is the best thing about the book, I think.
Yeah.
He has to go into town for some supplies, and so he does. He goes into town. He takes Wrangle, the magical horse. The dogs and the horses in this book are magic. So he takes Wrangle, the fastest horse in all the land, into town. He comes back. And when he comes back, Lassiter tracks him and finds out where Surprise Valley is. And later on, Lassiter comes by and visits them. Lassiter's visit had a disquieting effect upon Bess, and Venters fancied that she entertained the same thought as to future seclusion. The breaking of their solitude, though by a well-meaning friend, had not only dispelled all its dream and much of its charm, but had instilled a canker of fear. Both had seen the footprint in the sand. That's like when Robinson Crusoe sees Man Friday's footprint, or the cannibal's footprint in the sand. That's one of my favorite books, by the way, Robinson Crusoe. Same kind of story, you see. I think that is some evidence of Gray consciously creating this sort of the state of nature for these two, whether you want to call it Eden or a state of nature.
All right, so hold on. Now, if Lassiter's coming means they have to leave Eden, what does that make Lassiter?
Well, Lassiter, I don't think that Lassiter's coming in specific is significant qua him, but he just shows that the outside world is knocking at the door. I don't think that he's the snake or anything. The outside world is the snake.
Yeah. I really liked, for me, this is in, I'm just giving chapter numbers so our listeners, this is in chapter 13. They're talking about the cliff dwellings. Have you ever been to see those?
Yeah.
Amazing. It takes forever to drive there. Mesa Verde in Colorado. It's not close to anything. Bess is looking at that. Venter's first name is Bern, short for Bernard. Bern, people have lived here, she said with wide, thoughtful eyes. Yes, he replied. How long ago? 1,000 years and more. What were they? Cliff dwellers, men who had enemies and made their homes high, out of reach? They had to fight? Yes. They fought for what? For life, for their homes, food, children, parents, for their women. Has the world changed any in 1,000 years? I don't know. Perhaps very little. Have men? I hope so. I think so. Yeah, I paused on that bit for a few moments.
That whole conversation came up because he had found this white thing, and he picked it up, and it just turned to smoke and powder in his hands, and they figured out it was a bone, a human bone.
The meaning of life is in this chapter, at least as they figure it out. We can't be higher in the things for which life is lived at all. What are they? Why, I suppose relationships, friendships, love. Love, yes. Love of man for woman, love of woman for man. That's the nature, the meaning, the best of life itself. She said no more. Wistfulness of glance deepened into sadness. Yeah, so they're Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't leave. That's what I'm shouting at him. Don't leave.
Don't leave. Okay, we got to talk about Bess. She's the masked rider. She has a shame. He sees it in her face. She doesn't want to return to Oldring and his gang. She says that Oldring would go to town or go out on the range and lock her in a cabin for months at a time, or keep her in a cave. Venters hates Oldring for this. Later, all these shows are full of spoilers. Tough. So later he goes into town and he finds Oldring and he kills him. Well, he comes home. By and by, he comes back to Surprise Valley. And he's killed Oldring. And he finds out shortly after returning that, you know, all these people have secrets. And they'll declare to the other person, Karl, that I have the secret I'm not going to tell you. I hate that about as much as anything. So if
you have a secret, you should just not say it.
Right. Don't taunt me.
Say that you have a secret, then clearly you wish to tell your secret.
Right. But they do that all the time. And he comes back and he says, she says, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Then by heaven, we'll have it over and done with. Bess, did Oldring love you? Certainly he did. Did you love him? Of course, I told you so. How can you tell it so lightly? Cried Venters. Haven't you any sense of I don't know. Venters probably thinks that she was some sort of camp whore or something. I don't know. But something dark here is what Venters is afraid of. And then he says, What were you to Oldring? He panted fiercely. I'm his daughter, she replied instantly. And then later on, they go through that a little bit. She says, it is my shame. I told you I'm nothing. I'm nameless. I'm just Bess, Oldring's girl. She was nameless. That was her shame. She had no identity. Venters at that point realizes that he's killed her father, that she loved him, and that she was a hothouse flower. He kept her completely safe and completely inviolate by the world outside her. She had lived in Eden, in a way, and that she is completely untouched by all that was wrong with the world. It's just a horrific moment in the book, I thought. It's a little bit like the Oedipus story when Oedipus, gouges his eyes out.
Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out the story is more complicated than that.
They always are. But we're already complicated, and we're just getting more and more complicated. She's Oldring's daughter. Well, come to find out, spoilers, guys, she's Millie's daughter and was kidnapped. And Tull sent her with Oldring. And Oldring, after seeing this beautiful girl and having a change of conscience, decided that he would care for her and keep her pure in all ways, teach her to read, provide her with books, protect her from the criminal life that he leads. And upon Tull's death, planned on freeing her, only to be shot by Venters at the last moment. At the end of the book, all this comes out, and Lassiter realizes that she is his niece and he is her Uncle Jim. And it's all a bit too tidy, frankly, Karl.
Well, not only that, so Oldring's not the real father.
Oldring's not the real father.
Who's the real father?
Jane's dad. No, I'm sorry. Jim Lassiter's buddy, Millie's original husband.
That's what they tell her at the end, that it was Frank.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the chronology works out. So Jane thinks it's her dad.
I think it's Frank.
Yeah, we don't really know.
Yeah, we don't really know. Also, Karl, it's an Oedipus moment, I think, when he finds out he's killed her father. It's not his father, but hers. And he loves her more than himself. It's terrible. It's terrible. And then later, Jane and Lassiter have to flee. The red herd's gone. The white herd's been run off of a cliff and is dead and gone. She has nothing. And Lassiter puts her home to the torch. And they're leaving. And he said to this, don't look back. She doesn't look back, Karl.
Right. There's some biblical stuff there.
She doesn't look back. He burned Withersteen house, and she does not look back. Epic horse races.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. I mean, just riveting horse races. And I don't even care about that crap. And there's an epic horse race at the end of the story where Bess, the former masked rider, shows that she's the best rider in Utah on the best horse in Utah now that Wrangler's gone. And Bern and Bess escape, and they get to go back to Illinois and be people. Good people.
Yeah.
Which I love. Jane does not deserve Surprise Valley.
Oh, gosh. There's so much at the end. The end picks up speed so quick.
It does.
It's like, Mr. Gray, you have 3 more issues to wrap this up. Oh, okay. And, oh, gosh, there's gunfights. You finally get to see Lassiter in action. It's pretty fearsome. Lassiter unloads all of his rounds into the Bishop Dyer, into his gut. And there's this cold line, for me, it's on 311. Jane Withersteen offered up no prayer for Dyer's soul. I have 3 exclamation points next to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the change in her character. So she's not going to betray herself and everybody else for the sake of what she thinks Mormonism is. Before that, I love, boy, there's so much good stuff. They've kidnapped little Faye. And so Lassiter's going to go track her down and get her back. And it's going to kill the bad guys. He says, "It's ended, Jane," he was saying, so awfully quiet and cool and implacable. "And I'm going to make a little call. I'll lock you in here. And when I get back, have the saddlebags full of meat and bread and be ready to ride." He says, "Woman, don't trifle at words. I love you, and by God, I'll soon prove it. I'll ride away with you, marry you, if only you'll spare him." His answer was a cold, ringing, terrible laugh. "Lassiter, I'll love you. Spare him." "No." It's just wonderful. The next page, she says, she lifted her face closer and closer to his until their lips nearly touched, and she hung upon his neck, and with strength almost spent, pressed and still pressed her palpitating body to his. "Kiss me," she whispered blindly. "No, not at your price," he answered. Not at your price.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Lassiter's fun. Burns her house. Don't look back. I don't know. I like the end.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
Roll the stone. Lassiter, roll the stone.
He won't do it.
They finally get back to the valley. And so Jane and Lassiter get to the valley. There's riders that are coming, and they're going to get him. And Lassiter's having trouble. He can't do it. He's lost his nerve. He's got it. He's got her there. He's got the kid there. And he can't close the valley. And so she just shouts at him, "Lassiter, roll the stone." He says, "But if I roll the stone, we're shut in for always. I don't dare. I'm thinking of you. Lassiter, roll the stone." And then she says, "Roll the stone, Lassiter. I love you." And then finally he rolls the stone, and it goes down and it closes the outlet. And here's the ending of the book. The outlet to deception past closed forever. The end. So somewhere in their valley, there's some descendants of Lassiter and Jane.
Yeah. So you believe that she loved him?
Yeah.
That Sal would say anything she needed to get anybody to do whatever they wanted. I don't believe it. But I think it's her punishment. She's like, "I love you." She'll say anything. That's what she's been doing the whole damn story. Well, now it's him and her.
No, I think she's changed. I think that she's not going to offer her prayers up for Dyer's soul, which is a real harsh thing to do, because
it's true.
She's become more like him. And she knows he's going to go do this thing that she absolutely doesn't want him to do. but she stays with him anyway, which means she has moved on that point. That some Mormons, as Lassiter says, are blacker than hell. And she's not going to make that trade anymore. So, no, I think there's some character development in here. I think she moves and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Is he a noble savage? Bess is.
Yeah. Lassiter's not a savage because he's been raised in society. He's an outcast by choice. When his sister was done wrong and he took to the road to find her. Has been on the road for years and years and years. It's a lot like the Searchers.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of John Wayne movies, that's my dad's favorite John Wayne movie.
It's pretty good. Natalie Wood sure was pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard movie. About a guy on the road forever trying to find the little kid that was taken away. Yeah. So I guess, I don't know. It's an enjoyable book. It's not the world's greatest book. I don't think.
No.
But I leapt through the last 150 pages to get to the end.
It was a little tough early on.
Yeah, it picks up speed. It's influential. I mean, Zane Grey, this is what Westerns are. You know, we've made Westerns for much longer than there actually was a Wild West.
Right. Yeah. Our friend Warsham came through. He works with us at Online Great Books, and he came through Oklahoma with his bride, and we were going to go to a rodeo that weekend. We said, well, we're going to go to this rodeo. You want to come with us? And sure. So we went, and it was a primitive rodeo, not in an arena. It's in a pasture. People just pull their horse trailers around and make a I don't know, 5-acre arena, just out on open pasture. And the events aren't roping and barrel racing and all that stuff. It's cut a steer out, load it in a trailer, put your horse in the trailer, and shut the gate for time. Like really practical stuff. It was hotter than the hubs of hell. It was like, oh God, it was hot. And Maria's pregnant. It like to killed her. It was way too hot. And Warsham said, you know, it's funny how they just worship doing things in the least efficient way possible, you know, in mimicking a era that lasted about 12 years. But that's what rodeos and cowboy culture and Western culture is, you know, idealizing a time when, I don't know, before civilization crept in, you know?
Yeah, I like Westerns a lot. I want to try to be reflective on what's the appeal. There are stories about the edge, the frontier, where things are possible and more is demanded of you.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the stories bigger. I mean, compare this to my wife and I and our kids. We got a subscription to Hallmark movies now because we got rid of Netflix and everything else. So Hallmark movies are silly. Okay? They are small problems that beautiful people have, and they're all resolved in 90 minutes. But comparing, so it's always like some food blogger in New York, female food blogger whose dad gets sick back in Texas. She needs to go back to the ranch. She hasn't been there in 15 years. She goes down in her pink cowboy boots and everything, and it's all wrong. And then her high school boyfriend shows up. And now that I think about it, it's kind of the same thing, though. Because the characters have to go to the edge and find the people whose lives really matter. The ones who are actually like the burly carpenter, you know? They're often Western heroes.
Right.
Which I think I've just discovered something. Hallmark movies are Westerns.
I think you're right. Yeah, the love interest, the guy that she knew in high school, he's quiet and misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
There's more there than you first can see at a glance.
Yeah. Yeah, and he knows how to do stuff.
Yeah, he's
got
like
her car might break down, and he'll pull up by the side of the road and see her, and he'll fix her flat and
in the rain.
Yep, without a word.
Loves kids.
Westerns.
He loves kids, right?
Yeah,
he'll kill a man, but you know, he's got a soft spot for children.
So maybe, like you were talking about, how Eden is whether the biblical story appeals to us, whether it's true or not, in whatever sense religious stories are true, because it's anthropologically true. It appeals to something in human nature. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the Western does too. The wide open spaces, the chance to make your own life, to have decisions that actually matter.
To have stakes in an objective system would be great, right? If I don't do this, the herd will die. It's hyper reality, maybe,
or just reality.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It is just reality, but the author's job is to magnify all of that.
Yeah, we're thinking about sometimes work is nebulous.
Yeah.
You're never really sure if you've done a good job or a good enough job. But if you've got a herd of cattle, you know if you did a good job. I'm thinking of our friend Darren. I haven't seen him in a while, but I see his pictures on Instagram of all of his ranching stuff. I bet it's a hard day, but you get to the end of the day and you know you did everything. Your animals are all still alive. You have accomplished this much. That's an attractive thought.
Yeah.
Imagine if you worked in human resources somewhere. Then you spend all day and you're dealing with employee complaints and issues and everything. And you get to the end of the day. Did I accomplish anything?
Yeah, I made a bunch of people miserable. Mission accomplished. That's what you would say.
Well, I suppose it's a job that might need to be done, but there's not concrete markers of success. And you'd rather chuck it all and go and herd cattle.
Go to Surprise Valley.
Yeah, I've been enjoying a show on one of the streaming things called Victorian Farm.
Oh.
I flip it on when I'm doing my barbell programming. It's 3 people, two guys and a woman. They've found an old farm in England that hadn't been farmed for 60, 70 years. And the old farmhouse was still there. And it's from 1880. They rebuilt it and put the old stove in there. And they spent a year using the tools that they had at the time and doing everything the old-fashioned way. And it was interesting. You get to the end, the people on the show, they don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to leave my pigs. He'd found it very rewarding. But every day they're struggling. They're trying to get the wheat crop in. Their hay harvest was messed up because it was too wet. It looked attractive to me too, and I know that's big talk, and then to go out and have to actually do the work. But this is why we like these kinds of stories. It feels more real maybe than the life that we live. Yeah,
and now that we live these sort of post-industrial or industrial lives, we have to read about it instead of live it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really dry around here. It hadn't rained. September is normally, I think it's our wettest month in Oklahoma. I don't know, maybe the second wettest. I don't know. I'm not an almanac, but we normally get a lot of rain in September. Well, we didn't get very much. We might have gotten an inch of rain total in September here where I am. I turn the tap and water comes out. But the creek that runs through our place is dry, and it normally isn't. And, this book is set in 1871, and you have a dry September like that. That hand-dug well might go dry. Their problems are big, and they're clean, and they're understandable. And the stakes are high, and that's spooky. But I think there's a part of us that wants that. I like those kinds of stakes as opposed to layoffs.
You're made to have great challenges and to accomplish them.
Yeah, imagine, I don't know, people are going to hate me for this, but that's fine. Because I live in Surprise Valley, so kiss it. Imagine the worst thing in your life being a layoff.
Yeah.
That's not very good. Layoffs are no fun. And, if you're having trouble making the rent and all that stuff because you got canned because of COVID or whatever, I'm sorry. That's rough. But nobody's going to be writing a story about somebody in 2020 weathering a layoff. Like, it's just not ennobling. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and he was born in 88. How old does that make him? 32 years old? He said that up until this year, he thought that he would never have a shot at an interesting life because everything was such a smooth hell. He's like, we're going to have these kind of limited, fucked up wars where people who are in the volunteer in the military go and fight for us, and we don't do anything about it, and they just go do it, and we watch a little bit of it on TV, and we got pretty good antibiotics and just blah, blah, blah. He's just like, we're just going to have this. He just thought he was going to live a life of just a smooth hell. And he said, nope. That 2020 had kind of changed that in his mind.
Let me argue with myself. Why can't we just have a smooth hill? Why is that not good enough?
Because we're made for challenge. We have opposable thumbs. We're made to grasp the thing. We're made to do. We have our rationality. We're not robots. We're not supposed to just, rinse, lather, rinse, repeat all of our days. I think one of our purposes is to overcome. And if there's nothing to overcome, you get that ennui, Then you stand on the edge of the cliff like Camus and you want to jump.
Yeah. Oh, there's some biblical reference to the noonday demon. You get to the middle of the day, and I think Kierkegaard talks about it. You get to the middle of the day, and what do you do? So you got two answers to that thing in human nature that makes us love Westerns, that we want this challenge. We're sort of meant for that kind of challenge, I think. Well, if you can't get the challenge, you can medicate it away, or you can find challenges. You got to do something. I was thinking eventually we ought to read Genealogy of Morals.
Yeah.
By our friend Friedrich.
Yeah, I agree.
There's an insight in the beginning of that book. He is no friend of Christianity at all, which is why Christians ought to read him, because if you can stand Nietzsche, you can stand anything. He's the best enemy you're ever going to have. Mm-hmm. But he talks about how the Bronze Age person, that the work of the Christian religion was to turn the will of these Bronze Age sorts of people inward. And he's not a fan of it, but he recognizes it's a great thing. So you don't have a challenge. Your life is too easy. Well, there's always the inner life to take care of. You can make of yourself a sort of person that's something noble. Maybe you don't have the great deeds outside of the self to do, but I bet you there's something you can do. I mean, that's one of the benefits. Both of us do strength coaching in our many jobs. That's one of the benefits of taking people through getting strong. It is a great deed to remake yourself, and it's hard. And when it gets hard, most people won't do it, but you could be the sort of person that does it. So if you've got this ennui and life doesn't particularly have any meaning, and you don't know what to do, and you've never gotten in the squat rack or planted a potato, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. There's challenges out there you can find.
Yeah, how much of our current unrest is really about ennui?
Yeah, I mean, there's that joke about academic fights being so vicious because the stakes are so low. Mm-hmm. When the stakes are higher, the fights aren't vicious.
The Genealogy of Morals, a polemic.
That's a heck of a book. We'll do it sometime.
Yeah, we need to do that. Next book is going to be Tales of the South Pacific by James A. Michener. Mm-hmm. I ordered the same one you got there, Karl, but I don't know if I'm going to get it in time. I'm going to have to probably read my stupid electronic book.
I'm not sure the book will hold up to my reading. I tried to take notes on it, and it went through the page.
Are you reading very carefully?
I am reading very carefully.
Yeah. So that's going to be the next one. I really enjoyed the Zane Grey. I've read other Westerns, and everybody, I don't know, not everybody, but many people have their favorites, of course. People that read Westerns have their favorites. McKay and Reynolds just love Lonesome Dove, and I still haven't read it. I don't hate it or anything. Me and you're just piling in on all these other things. I still haven't read Lonesome Dove. A lot of people that I respect love that book. But I love so many of the Louis L'Amour Westerns. They're better. And I think we need to read a Louis L'Amour book at some point. We'll read Hondo or Bowdry's Law or something like that. And I think we'll enjoy those. Yeah. Shorter than this one. What do you think of Fenimore Cooper, man? What do you think about the Leatherstocking Tales? You hate that stuff?
Oh, gosh. I remember hating them in high school.
Oh, God. I love the Deerslayer.
probably means I need to reread them.
I love it.
I hated James Fenimore Cooper and I hated Charles Dickens.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on
high
Dickens.
school.
We're going to read some Dickens for Christmas, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll read that. And we were talking offline, you and Trent and myself, about we'll cover the Vince Guaraldi Charlie Brown Christmas album for the Music and Ideas podcast for Christmas. Do you love that album as much as I do, Karl?
I love it a lot. I don't know how to quantify that.
And the units are handbricks. How many handbricks?
I've got the music for it.
I love it. That green sleeves on there is just beautiful. So we'll cover that for the Music and Ideas show. It's almost Christmas, man.
Yeah.
It won't be long. Won't be long.
If we make it through December.
Well, that's Zane Grey's Riders of the Purple Sage. You should go, if you're wanting a Western, go read that one. It's the first big one. Boy, there have been a lot of movies made over that thing. Several silent movies covering that thing. It's a big story. And for pulp, how many plots are there in there? A plot, B plot, C plot, D plot?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the movie Pulp Fiction, they kind of tell the story backwards and it all kind of comes together at the end. Man, he puts a bow on a bunch of stories and the storylines in that last 26 pages or so.
Yeah, and he was a dentist.
Yeah.
He was a dentist from New York or something, I think.
Yeah.
Started writing Western novels.
Yeah. 1996 movie Riders of the Purple Sage with Ed Harris.
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't either. 1941 movie Riders of the Purple Sage. Oh my gosh, that's George Montgomery. 1931 George O'Brien. 1925 Tom Mix. 1918 William Farnham. Holy smoke. That's an early movie. 1918. Yeah. Are you excited about us going on the podcast and talking about Fritz Lang, Metropolis, with our friend Thomas Miras?
Yeah, that'll be fun. We have to figure out which edition because we'll have to buy it. The latest one where they found some New Zealand, some copy in New Zealand, and have tried to reconstruct it because they didn't know what they had. Nobody preserved movies. They used to make movies on cellulose
napkins. Yeah,
just super flammable stuff.
Just throw them away.
The movies were so young, nobody thought they would be anything worth preserving, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll be covering that one here soon, and we'll do that on the show, the podcast Criteria. That'll be fun. He gave us an awful list of things we could have chosen.
Not awful.
Karl said, well, any of these would be fine, but not, what did you say? Citizen Kane, or what was the other one? I can't remember. Why not Citizen Kane, Karl?
It's a film school movie.
Oh, I was hoping you had something about it where you hated it.
I didn't like it. It's the movie that all the film critics say is the best movie of all time, and you'll watch it and you're like, no, this is a movie designed to appeal to film critics.
Right. Oh, and you said no Little Women.
Oh gosh, I hate Little Women. I don't hate Little Women. I hate the story Little Women.
Right. That's so funny.
It bored me. I fight with my kid over this all the time. She just loves it. No, but it's a film school movie. Let me do this cool trick to impress all of my people who know about filmmaking.
Right. Well, I'm pleased that we get to do Metropolis. I love those Weimar Art Deco, silent German films. Just love them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. There's one of those shows. Remember, enrollment is probably open, and we need you to go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast and join us there because we do neat stuff. There are neat people there, and if nothing else, there is more, but if nothing else, you'll meet some pretty darn neat people, and there'll probably be one in your community you'll get to know, and you guys go have a steak together.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's that. Next week will be James Michener's Tales of the South Pacific, and I haven't started it yet, and I'm a little scared. I'm afraid I'm behind. Well, we'll talk to you guys in 1 week.